All right, welcome back, scholars. We are now going to complete our independent practice and our lesson for today. Remember, you should have in front of you your notes with your T chart that has Mark Anthony plus Cleo equals. And we will begin our readings on page 52 on today. Scholars, remember, we will be reading from page 52 under tested loyalty. As I read aloud, I want you to consider, what does the author mean when she says that Mark Anthony and Cleopatra needed to take time to discuss crucial affairs of state? What motivates Mark Anthony on page 52? So, again, we're looking at the interactions between Mark Anthony and Cleopatra and finding evidence to support our claim. I am going to be reading starting at page 52. This is just a picture of my T chart. I am reading under tested loyalty. You're considering, what does the author mean when she states needed to take time to discuss critical affairs of state. Tested loyalty. Fine wine, delicious food, endless pampering, and growing affection did not completely distract Mark Anthony. He and Cleopatra needed to take time to discuss critical affairs of state. Mark Anthony had to find out what Cleopatra's role had been in the recent chaos that rocked the Republic. Cleopatra was accused of aiding the Republicans in the conflict between Caesar's assassins and the Caesarians led by Octavian, Mark Antony, and Marcus Lepidus. She was now called upon to explain her actions during the conflict. Which camp had her undivided loyalty? So we've read that. Take time to think about, what did the author mean? What was the interaction between Mark Anthony and Cleopatra? Now that we have time, I want us to write our claim first. Go ahead, figure out what the interaction was between Mark Anthony and Cleopatra. 1 minute. 26 seconds. If you're already finished, go ahead and write in your evidence. Cancel. 5 seconds. All right, now that we have our claim, go ahead and take a minute, find our evidence. Again, now that we have our claim, and I'll go ahead and share my claim. My claim is that Mark Anthony interrogates or questions Cleopatra about her loyalty to Rome. Go into the text, find the best piece of evidence to support your claim. Thirty-five seconds. $20. 10 seconds. So, scholars, on my claim, I wrote that Mark Anthony interrogates Cleo about her loyalty to Rome. My best piece of evidence was that Mark Anthony had to find out what Cleo's role had been. And so here we see that although Mark Anthony has developed a relationship with Cleopatra, there's still some things that he needs to take care of and some answers that he has. Also, we notice that he is now about to question Cleopatra, and Cleopatra has to answer his questions about her loyalty. So, as we continue, we are now asking ourselves, does Cleopatra convince Mark Antony of her loyalty? And how does she convince him of her loyalty? Scholars, we are going to read starting at page 52. We're going to read that paragraph. Then we're going to go over to page 54 and we're going to read the second paragraph. Again, we are trying to answer, does Cleopatra convince Mark Antony of her loyalty? And answer, how does she convince him that she is loyal? Cleopatra anticipated this discussion, and she undoubtedly had her version of events eloquently prepared so that she could give compelling answers to all of Mark Antony's questions. She could convince Mark Antony that she fully supported Rome and respected the authority of the triumvirate, even though for her, Egypt's best interest always came first. Again, we're skipping over to page 54 and we're reading the second paragraph. As predicted, Cleopatra's overpowering personality, incalculable wealth, and persuasive speech put Mark Antony's fears to rest and captured his heart. Furthermore, he and Cleopatra were forging an alliance of their own. Cleopatra agreed to make her wealth and resources available to Mark Antony in his bid to overtake Parathea. So, scholars, we have just read this. We are now going to go in, answer the question. Was Cleopatra able to convince Mark Antony of her loyalty? And how did she do that? You have 1 minute. Let's go ahead and write our claim. All right. Now that we have our claim, and I know many of you probably have this claim as well, I put that Cleo makes it clear that she is loyal to Rome and that she will prioritize Egypt's interests. Mark Antony believes her and he falls in love with her. So now, scholars, we need to go back into our text and find the best piece of evidence to support the claim that we have just made. Again, we're going back into the text, finding the best piece of evidence to support the claim we've just made. 30 seconds. Nineteen seconds. All right. So, scholars, on my notes, the evidence that I found, and I did not get a chance to complete my evidence completely right. I do know where it's coming from, so I can go back. I wrote that she would convince Mark Antony that she fully supported Rome. That is on page 53. Then the other piece of evidence that I was writing down was that, as predicted, Cleopatra's overpowering personality, incalculable wealth, and persuasive speech put Mark Antony's fears to rest and captured his heart. Those two pieces of evidence supports the claim that Cleo made it clear that she was loyal to Rome and that she would prioritize Egypt, and that he, meaning Mark Antony, believes her and he falls in love with her. I'm going to give you a few seconds. Go ahead and tidy up your notes so that we can end today's lesson. So scholars, for our lesson recap. Scholars, remember that we were on lesson 7 for 3 days, which means you should use your notes from Thursday, Friday, and today to be successful on your exit ticket. Today's exit ticket will be an ACE paragraph. You are answering the question, how does the relationship between Mark Antony and Cleopatra develop over the course of chapter 7? Again, today's exit ticket is an ACE paragraph, meaning you will need an argument, context, two pieces of evidence, and an analysis. So let's do a quick recap. Remember, we discussed Mark Antony's first impressions of Cleopatra. That's the time when she arrived at the shore. We discussed how lavish and luxurious her boat was. Mark Antony invited her to a dinner. She refused, and in return, she invited him and her friends to dinner aboard her boat. Then we talked about the key events throughout chapter 7. They entitled them the 4 nights. We saw that there were 4 nights of these lavish dinner parties, and that is the start of of Cleopatra winning over Mark Antony's heart. And then in today's lesson, we see that although he has these emotions and feelings for Cleopatra, there's some unsettled business. He questions Cleopatra about her loyalty, and we see that Cleopatra is able to convince Mark Antony that she is loyal to Rome. In the end, she convinces him, and Mark Antony falls in love with Cleopatra. Scholars, again, remember today's assignment is an exit ticket. So now that you have completed your independent practice and lesson, you are now going to complete your independent practice and exit ticket. Remember to write in an ACE paragraph. I cannot wait to see your exemplar responses. Have a great Monday.